Hello ladies, I hope you're all doing well and have great plans for improvement in your own home. I'm Lydia Ruth. Welcome to Homemaking Radio. Please go to the link in the description box and listen to this video on the page on my blog where I have embedded it, because then you won't have the ads. And I want to start out today by telling you that while you're getting ready, I'll read a little bit to you. And I'll start out with one of Edgar Guest's poems. Maybe you want to start preparing for your homemaking day. Or if it's in the afternoon and you're not quite ready, you can just listen while you do something else. Okay, so this is called, I've got two poems to read to you. And they all concern success in a way that is like a normal pace. It's not like a frenzy for success, but just success in your own character. And I read to you At the Door. I'm going to read to you called Duty. A lot of these in this first little section of the Edgar Guest book are for men and young men regarding their duties and their character, but I like them too, and you may find them useful. To do your little bit of toil. This is called Duty. To do your little bit of toil, to play life's game with head erect, to stoop to nothing that would soil your honor or your self-respect, to win what gold and fame you can, but first of all, to be a man, to know the bitter and the sweet, the sunshine and the days of rain, to meet both victory and defeat, nor boast too loudly nor complain, to face whatever fates befall, and be a man throughout it all. To seek success in honest strife, but not to value it so much that, winning it, you go through life stained by dishonor's scarlet touch. What goal or dream you choose, pursue, but be a man whate'er you do. Now, here's another one that I really liked. And these are good to dwell on and think about, especially if you're teaching young men. See it through. This should have been included in the video I had with all of the If You Think You Are Beaten, You Are, and Don't Quit poems that he wrote. And this was called See It Through. When you're up against a trouble, meet it squarely face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders, plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer. See it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim, but don't let your nerve desert you. Keep your fighting in a trim. If the worst is bound to happen, spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile when the troubles you're beset, but remember you are facing just what other men have met. You may fail, but still fighting. Don't give up whatever you do. Eyes front, head high, to the finish, see it through. Now, I realize, of course, that some things we don't see through because we find them that they're going to be worthless, or we see that it was the wrong path we took. So that's okay. We can understand that. Some things won't get finished or done because we've decided that it's not going to work. I have another book someone sent me called Ceremonies of Common Days. I love that name. And there was a little entry in here. It was just like a little diary, and this was under the chapter called Summer. And whoever wrote it was thinking about these things, and I have to tell you that we don't sit down and observe and think about these things very much, nor write them down. And that's why I suggested you get a little journal, or a gratitude journal, or some little thing that you write, something that you notice. Our minds and our lives are so filled with messages and noise and worry and politics and controversies. I mean, everything we do seems to be a controversy, and so we're so caught up in trying to cope with all of that we forget about these things. And I wanted to read this to you because I think it's a great shield against stress. You'll feel so much better after listening to it. A day of rain is almost equivalent to Sunday. Candles may be burned then, and fires colored. Important letters may be written, and special books read. Food may be regarded with an air of importance. People may be invited in for tea. No degree of gaiety may be forbidden, nor may any finery be suppressed. There is gladness about rain that must be respected. And then there's an entry called Of Evening and Morning that I found very interesting, and it talks about, see, this was written in 1925, and you can see they already knew about the frenzy of life drowning out the loveliness of living. To make a day, it took an evening and a morning, talking about the creation, at least to make the first day. But that was when the world was new, and there was in it only light and darkness, day and night, and God. The world has grown more complicated since that creative era. To make a day now, it takes bells and whistles and clocks, with desks and committees and meetings and money and a serial of daily newspaper editions and hungry people and people who are too tired and luncheon engagements and telephones and noise and shoutings and much hurrying. All these things and many others it takes now, in addition to an evening and a morning. Perhaps these ingredients are necessary for the concoction of a day, but when I come to observe evenings and mornings, they do not seem to be the reason why light and darkness were separated, and day and night created. Whatever may be my philosophy, I, too, must work to make enough money to pay my share toward the bells and the whistles and the trains and the luncheon engagements and the privilege of hurrying. See, I think hurrying, according to my theory, might be part of where stress is coming from. But as I watch the stars of evening, and in the morning open my window toward the east, I shall observe the ceremonial of quietness of heart, of simplicity, and poise of spirit, that I may keep my soul and the soul of others free from entanglements in the machinery of a day. Yes, that we might not carry the, like the poem At the Door, leave it at the door, that we might not carry the stress around and let it slough off on other people. I thought that was a brilliant entry in this little. You could write a little book like this. Just write down thoughts that you have. And also, I got another new book, and it's not really new because this was also written in 1925. Eric Sloane's Do's and Don'ts of Yesteryear. And I always liked and this was published by Dover. And Dover books, the quality of them just can't be beat. Now this one here is the same book, and it was published by Avon Books. But you see the quality. I mean, it's all in there if you want to use it. Yes, it's just as good. But I love to hold a good book, don't you? It seems so precious. These are the kind of books I like to go out and walk around with and read and act like I'm in pioneer era when people used to walk around reading books just like they use their phones today. And so, Do's and Don'ts of Yesteryear, a treasury of early American folk wisdom. Now, no matter where you live, this would be applicable to the past just about anywhere. And you could probably find an author of the time in your country that wrote something like this. A delightful mixture of early American know-how and the good old-fashioned gentility, Eric Sloane's Do's and Don'ts captures the spirit of bygone America in words and pictures. Now, I often read etiquette books and manners books and things on courtesy, and they come from the past. There's a couple of books that are more current, and those were Emily Barnes' Manners for Boys and the one on Manners for Girls. And they're more current and probably more applicable to the problem of courtesy today. But in reading some of the ones from the past, we must not get the idea that everybody was so much more polite. They were rude and they were crude, and that's why these books were written at the time, was to put a stop to some of it, to kind of put a rein on it, kind of try to get it corralled and at least get some people to listen, make life more tolerable and safer for other people. So let me read Do's and Don'ts of Yesteryear. And it was so they've got, I love the drawings. So this chapter is called Do. Do, forward. Early America was cluttered with a weary lot of don'ts. And I agree, I wasn't in early America, but I am vital enough to remember kind of an atmosphere of no. You know, when you grow up like we did back in the 1950s, you think your middle name is no, or be quiet. And it's so much different now. I enjoy hearing, of course, I homeschooled my children, and I enjoyed listening to them and their ideas and their observations when they read something or learned something. And I tried to make our lives more positive. And if they said, can we go out and make a whatever, I would say, well, sure, let's give it a try. And let them at least explore the idea. And so here's the foreword, and it's on the word do. Early America was cluttered with a weary lot of don'ts. People were so strict about not doing this and not doing yet. Yet, that disciplined life was also livened by an amazing number of things to do. Benjamin Franklin's warning about idle hands getting into mischief was intended for children, but there's so little for adults to do for themselves nowadays that the self-doer is nearly obsolete, and modern living has become a bore. Now, this is written in the, I believe it was first written in the late 1940s. But I was thinking today how much we need pioneers in everything. We miss the pioneers. We miss the people that started something or revived something or went back to basics, and in teaching their children, maybe reading scripture and deciding to follow that. And we miss them. But they weren't a huge group. They started out very lonely and very small, and their ideas were rejected by many. And I was one of them. And my children are always asking me, please tell us what the journey was on your way to getting into homeschooling or getting into other creative things that I did. And, excuse me, I also got a cushion here that's not cooperating. And I also think we need pioneers in things like keeping our families together and wholesome, and telling our children that other people don't have the same values as we do, and we're different. We're different. We're more creative. We tend to want to be do-it-yourselfers. We like to look up things in books, and we like to learn. We like to get new ideas and that are good. And we like to reason about things, and we want to have a stable life, and we want you all to meet someone and get married and have a home and have children. And so on our way to doing that, there are a lot of things you might have to forego. You might not have all the friends that other people have. There's nothing in the Bible that guarantees you a friend. You might just be with your own family. I grew up in Alaska on a homestead, and many of those people had no particular friends, but their families did things together, and if there was nothing to do, they spent the evening reading books, each one their own thing, or they learned how to occupy themselves without the social dependence. And social things with friends these days is so different that it can often be an addiction. And when you decide you can't have that friend anymore because of the effect it's having on you, or the bad influence, or just because you want to be more independent, you can suffer a kind of withdrawal, like an addiction. So it takes about 3 days of quietness and peace away from something to adjust to it. It's very painful at first when you're giving up something. Try giving up something, sugar or some other thing that you're used to, and see how long it takes you to get along without it, and to feel better, to feel more free, and to also activate your mind more. And so with manners, we're going to be different. We're not going to change the world. We're going to be different. Now, what I have noticed about people, and especially in the home, we have to realize that though we might not spout off at somebody or get up in their face and yell at them and argue with them and stuff, the other people don't notice that we're not like that. They don't even notice. It doesn't daunt them a bit that you're more reserved or you're more refined. They don't even notice it. In fact, I think if they do, they're trying to get you to respond so you won't be refined any longer, so you'll throw a fit just like they do. And they're testing you and they're pushing you, and they don't notice for a minute that you're not doing the same things they do or saying the same things they do. They just think like that's normal life. And sometimes we have to decline to be part of something, to decline an invitation, to decline to be part of something. Some of it could be because of an influence we're not sure about. The other could be we need more rest. We need to be home alone. When I was growing up, our parents were very cautious about friendships because they knew we'd want to be more at somebody else's house than our own, because in your own house you have chores and you have things to do, and you have your parents and you have to be in subjection to them, and when you're at somebody else's house you're a guest, and everybody likes that feeling, and we like the get-togethers and the things other people do for us. But quiet and peace are so important. And so I think an activity for a young person laying on their bed and reading a book is just as important, or more, probably more, than any kind of social activity created by something else. And while I'm going on about this, I want to suggest that some of the youth meetings, especially in churches, which they really shouldn't be in churches. I think the families should supply whatever extra activities and social life they have. The family should supply it. The parents should invite people over and do it under the parents' eyes, watchful eyes. And we should never turn our children over to youth groups, because it's just inexperienced young people providing activities for other inexperienced young people. It's not wise. It can't result in wisdom at all. We need to be surrounded by wisdom, and our children certainly need to be surrounded by wisdom. We can substitute a yes for a no. I learned that a long time ago. If there's something they're not allowed to do, let's substitute something nice and enjoyable that they are allowed to do. In other words, when you say no, you can't go out with those people, and we're not going to go to their event. Don't just send them to the kitchen to wash the dishes, and don't send them to mow the lawn. Give them something to do that will benefit their hearts and their minds. Remember yesterday I read you some sentences out of this book by A. Becca called Grammar and Composition 1, and what a delight the words were to your soul, because even though you were trying to dissect sentences, it was such a wonderful experience to fill your heart with the wisdom of God's Word. So I'm going to read the do's. One of the first delights of life was when the child, and this is from Eric Sloane's Do's and Don'ts of Yesteryear. One of the first delights of life was when the child learned to button up his own clothes. Grinding coffee, making ice cream, shining shoes, and nearly all the small movements that make up the continuous ballet of daily life a few years back are now being done by plugging into a socket or flipping a switch. Yes, there's just something, now I explained, and I understand why the people before us, the grannies before us, wanted to wash something by hand, or wanted to wash a few dishes by hand, because they enjoyed it, and they thought it was time well spent. Even the satisfaction of knowing where that electric power comes from is kept from us, and sometimes the power company doesn't even know. I still recall the extraordinary pleasure of pumping spring water and carrying it for the household. We used to call it running water because we had buckets. We'd run down to the lake and fill them and run back up the hill. That was our running water. But I remember bringing it up the hill and setting it on top of the wood cook stove and heating it for a bath. and it would take about 2 buckets to make enough for a bath. But yet that bath, I'll have to say, was so refreshing, and you felt so different afterwards. Of course, you had really worked up a sweat carrying it up. Now I turn on a faucet, and I'm too lazy to wonder where the stuff is coming from. Perhaps, if I really knew, I wouldn't drink it. We used to pray to God for our needs to be fulfilled. Now we depend upon the establishment. Years ago, now he's writing this, I believe, between 1949 and 1925. Years ago, when I contemplated the difference between the early American and his modern counterpart, I made some interesting finds. The old-timer was smaller, about 20 to 50 pounds lighter, and the average man of today, but he was wiry and much stronger. I can remember, those of you who are vital can remember, when everybody was sinewy and wiry, and we didn't even know what fat was. And some people thought they were fat. And today we'll look back on old pictures and say, and we thought we were fat, and they were actually quite trim. Bread was as solid and hard as the people who ate it, and now the staff of life is as fat and spongy and full of air as we have become. I found some good bread recipes and learned how to make sourdough. Now, sourdough, you don't need sugar in it, and there is yeast in the air and in the bread, and once you've mixed the flour with a little water, you can see it starting to grow, so it's not that hard. And if you have that book called Cottage Core, there is a recipe and a little schedule, like 1 to 12 days or something to follow to make this sourdough bread, and they tell you every step to take. It's kind of fun. It's like looking after a new person. The sports fan of today seldom does his own thing. Instead, he watches others do their things, eating and drinking at the TV while sitting on a behind that would have shamed great-grandfather. Yes, and this is the thing, it's lovely to read books. That's passive, though. It's better to write. Even if you're not writing a book, it's better to write. That's active. While it's wonderful to read a book, you need to be reading it with yourself in mind, thinking, oh, I could do something like this about myself, because you are so unique. Yours would be slightly different. And so we live a passive life, and that's one reason when the descendants come, I like to put on a play, and then we watch each other and laugh, real hearty belly laughs. They'd never watch on a movie, and enjoy that kind of entertainment so much better because it's active, not passive. It's no doubt doing things by and for ourselves has become a lost art. And if you want to be a do-it-yourself, or you just think about some of the things that we do automatically. I have been studying a little bit about how petroleum is so embedded in our things and in our life and even in our foods and other things. And so today I wanted to try an experiment, and I've told you about this before. Where am I? Okay, so here. This is called almond oil. You can get coconut oil like this, and it's called Nature's Truth, and usually we have it at a place here called Grocery Outlet. Sometimes you can get it at Walmart, but anyway, it's just the pure stuff. And I put that on my skin first thing, and then because petroleum makeup will stick, we often wonder, why doesn't our homemade makeup stick? It's because it's got to have something to stick to, and that's why we use an oil. You can use like I said, there's coconut oil, there's vitamin E oil, and there's also the that bean oil. I'm trying to think what it's called. Castor oil. But those all need to be mixed with a looser oil like almond oil, because they don't spread very well. Vitamin E oil is real sticky, doesn't spread. But anyway, so here's my makeup base. What it is, it's cocoa powder here. Which is just a baking powder that doesn't have anything else in it, no sugar or nothing, and arrowroot. Now, you can also use cornstarch, which is a white thickening agent starch, but anyway. So then all you have to do is mix that up according to how dark you want it for your face, and then you dip your little brush in it and brush it around like this, and it sticks. That's what I have on my face today. And then, well, I have something here called beetroot powder for making juice for smoothies and stuff. This is what it looks like on the inside. I wanted to be a do-it-yourselfer here. I don't know if you can see that. It's red. And I thought, well, I'd make some other things. It all makes me hungry. Everything smells so good. That's the only problem, is that you're not going to lose any weight if you put cocoa powder on your face. So this is the blush, and it's beetroot powder with some of that arrowroot powder. You just dip your little brush in it, and if you've got the sweet almond oil on your face, you can use this. Just give yourself a little color if you've become vital and lost a lot of the natural color in your face. And then this, I wanted to show you this, see what this is. This is the beetroot powder with coconut oil, and it is for a lip balm. See there? And it tastes good too. And they don't stay on like all day. But they don't have the petroleum in it. I just wanted to experiment. I'm an experiment, you know, scientist, social scientist of my own life. And I just wanted to experiment to see how it would make me feel and if I liked it any better. Because almost all lipsticks have petroleum in them, and I don't think it's, you know, dangerous or anything. I just like to try something different. And of course, my eyebrows have been painted on with the same cocoa powder, and also there's blueberry. There's dried blueberry powder that you can use in smoothies and stuff, and I use that for other parts of my makeup. And I just wanted to show you, you know, being a do-it-yourselfer, think of what we do. Think of what we're doing and where we're getting things. And it's a lot of fun, because then if you can teach your children, they'll know that there's an alternative. You know, what if? What if we don't have it? What do we do? And so it's good for them to understand that. And you can make your own bread. And once you've read the ingredients on a bag of bread, and you're wondering, why do you always feel so dragged out and tired, or your stomach hurts, or you have skin problems or other problems, if you start making your own bread, you might see a difference. And so he says, on rainy days, while poring through old almanacs, I used to copy down recipes and ancient household hints. Trying them out was a constant game of fun. Some friends insisted I was being quaint and nostalgically precious. Now today they would call you a conspiracy theorist, or they would say that you were living in the past, or you were living in a dream world if you decided to make your own soap, or you decided to make your own perfume. I ran across a video on YouTube about mastering the art of perfume, and all you need is just a little bit of you can get essential oils anywhere now, all over. They're quite available, and it had a technique for making your own perfumes if you wanted to do that. And I love the scent of orange, and so it was quite easy. You don't even have to use essential oils with some of these things. Some friends insisted I was being quaint and nostalgically precious. Now, you've got to realize whenever you're doing something that's different, and we're different, and that's do-it-yourself and that's independent, you're going to hear this kind of stuff. They don't like it that you're happy. People don't like it that you're happy and that you're not going to be like them. Isn't there a scripture that talks about they think it's strange you run not with them? And they want everyone to be pretty much alike. But whenever a problem came up, I usually had the answer. I could cure hiccups, light a proper fire, mend almost anything, predict the weather, get rid of ants, swallows, bees, or boring house guests. I'll be right back. Thank you, ladies. I could tell a fresh egg, and in fact, that book that I was reading to my older grandsons who are in their 20s called Don't Get Mad, Get Even talked about the boring house guest, and it was done with such grace and aplomb. It was just absolutely amusing. In other words, why make his whole book was about don't give yourself high blood pressure and anxiety over anything. Just figure out a way to do it that will be fun. And so he said here, I could tell a fresh egg from a spoiled one. Clean spots, fix broken furniture, make paint or glue or whitewash or soap, wines, herb teas, and switchel. Don't know what is switchel. So you could probably learn how to do that yourself. What would you do if you didn't have paint or glue? And not least, it doesn't mean you have to go all, you know how they call you a conspiracy theorist. It just means you should all know how to do this, and perhaps this is something your own family could try to do together, is learn to do these things. One of the books we used was called Back to Basics, and it showed how to make every little thing. And the modern homemaker of the time, the things that she had in her homes were a braided rug, which was usually braided out of strips of old shirts. She had cushions and pillows on her couch, and her couch was not like our couches today, like a real couch, but probably a structure with a board leaning up against the wall, and then you put a blanket over it, and she'd have a quilted blanket. These things were precious to these women, often given to them at their weddings. And she would have a little trunk that had her things in it. She would have a collection of cookbooks, maybe just one, but still she had the stuff she needed, and she had curtains, she had the stuff she needed to set up housekeeping. So he said, and not least of all, I had the making of this handy little book to be read during rainy days, chock full of things to do. So here it is, by Eric Sloan. And these are some of the things to do that were more outdoorsy, but I wanted to read it page by page, and so I want to read the names of the chapters to you so you'll understand where we're going with this, and see if they have a list of the chapters here. Well, let's see if this other one has a list of the chapters. No, they don't. But it's 1749 dessert recipes, and at the table, and what to do at the table, manners at the table, how to dress, your dressing habits, your dressing and habits, what is going on in the drawing room. That would be the front room. That would be the main room, or the lounge, or the living room, what we call today. How to sit. In every era, they always warn about sticking your legs out in front of you for other people to fall over. How to act in public places. How to act in speech and writing. Let me see what the other. Don't be fancy. And there's one here for womankind. Very interesting. So I don't know which one you would be the most. And it's called A Little Book of Early American Gentility. And try these 1749 desserts. How to read a barometer. How to make a paper cup. Yeah, we used to know how to fold a piece of paper and go up to the water fountain and fill it so that we could have a drink without putting our mouth up by the spout. How to make a 5-pointed star. How to make a hammock. We learned how, just by ourselves, how to make a raft to float on. How to make old-time toys from spools and buttons, right here. How to make cardboard, it says here, cardboard boxes slide everywhere. How to clean windows. How to use cardboard boxes for many different things. It says, before sweeping a floor, sprinkle it with damp tea leaves. This collects dust and also keeps it from rising into the room. I wish they'd still do that. It says how to measure something, goodness, there's so much in here. I don't even know where to start. Should we start at the table? Well, let's start at the table. Don't, as an invited guest, be late for dinner. This is a wrong to your host, to other guests, and to the dinner. It's actually, I find that with classes. If I have a ladies' class and it's on, some Bible study or homemaking or something like that, if everyone has got there on time and made the effort to get there on time, we go ahead and start on time. And the ones that didn't get there in time, we're not trying to be rude, but it's not fair to the ones that made the effort for them to sit there for half an hour waiting for the ones that lagged behind. And we're doing the same with church services too. We start at a certain time and get out at a certain time, and we don't sit there and wait for the ones that didn't get there on time. It's not fair to the ones that have to leave early. So it says, don't, as an invited guest, be late for dinner. This is wrong to your host, to other guests, and to the dinner. This is one way, if you're a young person, you can judge your friends if they're trying to have good habits, but are they always late to whatever event there is, and are they a good example? Don't be late at the domestic table, as this is wrong to your family, and it is not calculated to promote harmony and good feeling. Don't seat yourself until the ladies are seated, or at dinner party until your host or hostess gives the signal. Don't sit a foot away from the table or sit jammed up against it. Yeah, that looks kind of awkward, doesn't it? Don't tuck your napkin under your chin or spread it on your breast. Bibs and tuckers are for the nursery. Don't spread your napkin across your lap. Just let it fall over your knee. Don't bend over your plate or drop your head to get each mouthful. I call that, when people surround their plate and they hunker down. And that was in Man in Demand, showing young men how to conduct themselves at a dinner with someone. You don't put your arms around your plate and lower yourself just so the spoon will be closer. It's not very civilized, apparently. So don't bend over your plate or drop your head to get each mouthful. Keep as upright an attitude as you can without appearing stiff. We were taught just to go halfway up with your utensil and halfway down with your head, but not. You don't hunker over it like you were at an animal at a trough. And all these things are hard to teach anymore, because nowadays people are sitting in front of a movie with a sandwich on their lap, and there's no manners required. I think a lot of people aren't really eating together anymore, and I can understand that. And especially as their families grow and get more elderly, there's no one there, and but I think it's good to know these things so that if you are across the table from someone, you don't make them sick. Don't eat fast or gorge. Always take plenty of time. Don't take huge mouthfuls. Don't chew audibly. Don't spread out your elbows when you are cutting your meat, but keep your elbows close to yourself. Those of you who grew up in large families know you can't do that. You're at a long table, and I was the oldest of 7 children, and you cannot spread your elbows out. You always had to have your arms close to your side because of the space. Don't stretch across someone else's plate to reach for anything. Ask for it to be passed. Don't apply to your neighbors to pass articles when the servant is at hand. Oh yes, they all had servants, didn't they? Don't turn your back to one person for the purpose of talking to another. And don't talk across the one seated next to you. You'll see somebody seated next to you. Don't go around them and try to talk to that person over there. One thing I noticed, and this started happening, I believe, probably in the 1980s, I noticed where someone would stand in front of you with their back to you while they talked to the person that was formerly just talking to you. They just kind of interrupted. Instead of standing there with all of you, they turn their back to you and cut you off and face that other person, which I thought was very strange. And I don't know where they got this from, but I've seen it a couple of times. It's most discouraging. I even saw it one time at what we call a baby shower, where we celebrated the birth of someone's baby, and people were giving the baby clothes and gifts and things. And the young mother was sitting somewhere, and people were kind of gathered around in a semicircle in chairs, and someone took their chair and went and sat right in front of her and blocked the rest of the ladies off. I don't know what they're thinking, but this could be something in childhood and in the home that's never noticed, or this practice in the home, and of course no one felt qualified to tell her not to do that. And a lot of people don't even feel uncomfortable with that, with even doing it or even seeing it. And don't talk when your mouth is full. Never, in fact, have your mouth full. It is more healthful and in better taste to eat small morsels. So there's so much here, so much more, and you can really see, at least I can, how much my conduct has slipped from this. These were many rules that we grew up with, even on the crude homesteads with our board tables and the pieces of logs that our fathers made stools out of to sit on. We still had an etiquette to obey, because you didn't want to make somebody scream and you didn't want to upset anybody in the home. So we still had rules in dress and habits. Don't neglect your personal cleanliness. Don't be untidy in anything. And there's just a lot of other things that are kind of old-fashioned that we probably wouldn't even know about. Don't look over another person's shoulder when he is reading or writing. I feel the same way about watching someone get their food ready in the kitchen. You don't look over at their plate and see what they're doing. A lot of people want privacy. And you don't look over something that they're looking at on their phone or anything like that. It's just obtrusive. And so they have a lot of other rules here. I wanted to read a little bit. I wanted to tell you more about before we had curriculum in homeschooling. And I didn't want I enjoyed this book here I showed you last time because of the scriptures that were used to teach people how to learn what parts of speech are, and they would use scriptures. And so here's I just wanted to read some of this to you, but I don't want you to get the idea that all homeschooling is just dependent on this little box of curriculum that you get, because you need to be looking around for other things too, so that the children will learn how to learn outside of the curriculum, outside of the book, outside of their grade, and won't stop learning. So let me read some of using objective case pronouns. I won't even explain what that is, but I want to read the sentences. The Bible tells we or us, you have to choose one. The Bible tells we or us people the right methods for living. Moses commanded he, him, and his nation to set the people free. Forgive we us our debts as we forgive our debtors. The Lord gives we us daily benefits. Moses taught Aaron and they them the commandments of the Lord. Nebuchadnezzar placed Shadrach and they them in the fiery furnace. So you see, it's teaching you how to use these pronouns, which ones are correct and which ones aren't. Those are the only they thems we need to know, right? And but I wanted to encourage you to use other things. Back in the 80s, before we had full curriculums that were printed up, and they were fun when we got them, but we realized you can find it anywhere. I used to pick this little magazine up. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people think it's a rag. It's called Women's World, and at the time it was like 50 cents, So it was the only one I got. But I'd look through it first and see they always have a feature about some place in the world. It could be England, could be France, it could be Africa, it could be anywhere. And so, for example, I was really interested in this one, so I bought the magazine because, and then of course the pages that you use, you can tear out and put behind plastic and put in a book or a binder. This was about Silver City, New Mexico. And what I wanted to show you was this little town front here, and the sidewalk was so high. The sidewalk was right up there with and I've been there. That's why I wanted to save this, because I wanted to show some of my own descendants. The sidewalk right up there by the shops, but it steps down a long ways, and you can't step down there. It's so far. You have to go all the way down the street and find some steps to step down to get onto the road. This is where the cars drive. If you're a short person, that sidewalk's at your waistline if you're walking on the street. And what the explanation that we got when we got there about this deep road and the sidewalk right up here, there was two explanations. One was that they used to drive cattle or sheep through town, and that way they couldn't get up on the sidewalk because it was too high. And then there was another one that people had to stand up higher than the cars because they were more important or something like that, or just held in higher esteem. But anyway, besides that, I'd always flip through these to see what it was that they were seeing that time. Besides that, now they have a place where you can go on a virtual tour of this town, and it gives you the web address here. And of course, I always like to see the old rocks and buildings and things like that. So you have to have an eye for things that would be beneficial to your children, and you can't just depend on the curriculum. That curriculum is just going to give you a taste of it and give you some basic things to get started on, and then you can go from there. And you don't settle for just the one or two art lessons that come in. You start going further and investigating further. So I'll finish with several things. Number one is after you've prepared to get ready for your day, you want to make sure you can do several things a day. And one is try to be creative in some way and try to make some progress in your homemaking. And those are the things I'm working on right now. And so I want to read something from Stormy O'Merton's book, Greater Health, God's Way. And the reason I liked it is because it was more than just what to eat and how to exercise. She had a whole chapter on rest, and it's called Perfect Rest. She says, sleep is a natural part of life and should come easy. What keeps us tossing and turning? Why is it so hard to stop thinking and wind down? Why does The reason we don't sleep well at night is because we're not living the way God intended for us during the day. And she talks about sleep being more than a good mattress. And I always wondered about that because back in the day they started inventing better sleeping equipment, mattresses and things. And I can remember being brought up on very just very minimal comforts when I was growing up. Nobody had a sleeping problem. But she says it's essential for good health. And she talks about all the things. If you could get a hold of this book, Greater Health, God's Way, the bookstore that I use called Thrift Books has a lot of copies of this, and I order some of them to give away. And she says if you don't get real rest, you have no life. And all the things that steal from your sleep: worry, fear, and anxiety, toxic forming foods, too much noise, too much light, crowded sleeping conditions, restrictive clothing, not enough air or circulation, and all these things will rob you of sleep. And she talks about getting during the day. She says get plenty of fresh air and sunlight, and take frequent breathers. And she says doing the breathing exercises I mentioned, and so that's her chapter on exercises. Eat food the way God made it. Natural foods, especially the fruit and vegetables, have a calming effect on your nerves. Drink herbal teas, and fast and pray. Take short naps, and live in peace. And I really think that has a lot to do with it. Live in peace, she says. Allow half an hour to unwind. I don't know if you grew up, someone would say, okay, it's time to go to bed, and then they want you to sleep. But you really do need half hour to unwind. And so, of course, we always had some little book we could read while it was still light before we fell asleep. And she said, have a nighttime ritual. Yes, something as simple as washing your face, brushing your teeth, and combing your hair, going through and pulling the drapes, something to wake up to and something to sleep to. Little habits that make you wake up and little habits that make you sleep. Knowing that it's nighttime, shutting the place. They call it closing up shop, shutting the place down. And to remember your prayers. It's just better to get up and go talk to Christ. And she talks about ceasing from your labors and how to take life as a vacation while you're at home, not having to go on vacation. Sometimes vacations are more stressful than just staying home. I've gotten to where I'd rather be home. And somebody told me once, well, maybe I should just get all your friends and children and we'll just pay for a vacation for you. And I said, I've already done that. I've already been there. So I'd rather stay home. To me, a vacation is a nice book and a nice cup of tea and noiselessness and just pleasantness. So ladies, I hope that you have gotten some benefit out of this, and I want to encourage you to keep close to Christ and don't second guess your instincts on some things. If you sense that something is not quite right, just pay attention to it and don't let peer pressure cause you to second guess that you could be right. And homemakers have that instinct. So I hope that you get everything done that you desire today and you'll stay close to Christ, and I'll talk to you later.